describe it, but a circular,
green.
yes, green that you light, and it burns and it keeps away the mosquitoes. So for Guyanese and even for Caribbean people, it's something that they keep in their homes. And so this company imported from Guyana this mosquito coil. It came through duty-free under the CBI. There's no problem. The FDA, that's the FDA again, Federal Drug Agency, had no problem with it. And so it was on the shelves for sale. And one day an inspector from the Environmental Protection Agency went in and saw the coils. There were 9 boxes. And when he looked at the ingredients, there was something listed there that apparently was not allowed in the United States. But the one agency never told the other agency here in the US. So for the customs it wasn't a problem. For the FDA it wasn't a problem. But for the Environmental Protection Agency it was a problem. Not only did they seize the 9 boxes, but they instituted 9 counts, 9 charges of violation of EPA regulations. And each count carried a fine of $9,000. So he was looking at $81,000 in fines. Now if he had to pay that, he would have been out of business. So at that time, we didn't have a Guyanese American Chamber of Commerce, we had a Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce, which I happened to be the chairman at the time. And immediately we had to advocate on behalf of this business, because there was no way he could pay $81,000 in fines and continue in business. So we worked on his behalf and got it down to 1 count. And we worked at the federal level, the state level. We spoke with members of Congress. We argued about the CBI, and pointed out that this wasn't a problem caused by the Caribbean. It was caused by lack of information sharing among agencies in the US. And they agreed to 1 count. But we weren't even happy with the 1 count. We wanted it removed. Well, they told us that it's going to be difficult and so on, but they'll ignore it. So okay, you ignore it, we'll ignore it. And that company has carried on in business, and there's been no repercussion since. And as a matter of fact, the mosquito coil is now is now on the shelves again, because we made an argument for the mosquito coil to be on our shelves. The second example is the frozen fish example. There's a lady in Georgia who imports fish from Guyana. The fish is known, you guys know it as hassa. It has another biological name that I don't remember, but in Florida, that is an endangered species. Although the fish didn't originate in Florida, somebody got up some, had them in a pond. During one of the hurricanes, the pond broke away, and the hassa got into the system and multiplied, and so there was a lot of hassa in Florida. Okay? So there's no original to them, but somebody did some research, found out that it had a certain biological name, and put it on the endangered species because there was a whole lot of hassa, but not, they wanted to preserve it and so on. They fish and wildlife people. So this lady imported her hassa. La Park and Airways got it. It wasn't even staying in Florida. It was going on to Georgia. But the fish and wildlife people, and the poor lady didn't even understand what was happening. They charged her with so many counts of some violation of the fish and wildlife thing, and she just abandoned the fish and went to Georgia. Went home happily. 3 years later, she got pulled over in Georgia for a routine traffic offense or something, and found that she was on the most wanted list in Florida for violation of some, because you know, I don't know what happened, but she never even got a notice from them after she left. At least so she claims. I don't know if she got that and was ignoring it, but she claims she never got it. And they held her and was going to put her before the court for extradition to Florida. We again intervened, you know, at all levels. Although it was a state matter, we know sometimes it's hard to get the state to, you know, to agree to things. They need the pressure of the federal government and so on. So we dealt with our Congress people, with the Department of Commerce, with a friend of the Caribbean, a man with Caribbean roots himself, Eric Holt at the time, was our Attorney General in Washington, and Eric was sympathetic, and so on. Again, we just couldn't get it written off. She had to appear in court, so she had to come back, appear in court, and she was found guilty, but the judge, I don't know, there's a way they do it. I'm not an attorney, but there was some way or she had to admit to it. Anyhow, it's not on her record, and she didn't have to pay any fine. But the Fish and Wildlife people, I suppose that's one way of protecting lawsuits and so on. You know, they were found to be correct in their action. So anyhow, all's well that ends well. In that case, they didn't go to jail, but you know, again, she was in their chamber to work on her behalf and do that for her. She would have spent the night in Islamorada in Georgia, or probably more than one night, depending on how long it took her to get an extradition hearing to Florida. So these are the kinds of things that we, you know, we do and chambers do. And this is the kind of things the Guyanese American Chamber of Commerce has done and will continue to do.
So what role did the Guyana embassy play in fighting the encounter?
Well, I don't know if it's a question and answer period. I have no problem if the audience doesn't mind. What role the embassy played? Not any real role, because the embassy, well, and sometimes quite correctly, there are certain boundaries and limitations that an embassy, you know, has in its conduct with the host country. Yeah, it can draw attention to, you know, an anomaly, and they can ask to be present when someone who violates or is accused of violating the law is being interrogated and so on. But there's some fine lines about the role it can play for actually advocating on behalf of people who have been charged with a crime. I mean, the embassy doesn't, no embassy, you know, the way the diplomatic relations are set up, you really can't advocate in favor of or on behalf of anyone charged with an offense. You can only be asked to be present to make sure that their rights are protected. So to that extent, the consulate did, you know, they cooperate to the extent that they were allowed to cooperate. But like I said, it's not much an embassy can do other than, like I say, make sure that you're not ill-treated, and that goes for even if you're in prison or you know, I mean, the embassy, you can call an embassy or a consulate, or an honorary consul can come and you can make sure you can, you know, you can stress to law enforcement that your rights be respected and that you get all that you know, you're entitled to, telephone calls, access to an attorney, and that kind of thing. But really and truly, they can't argue your guilt or innocence. They're not allowed to as diplomatic representatives. Since there might be some interest in those two examples, are there any other questions, or could I move on? Okay, I'll move on, as I know. Okay, on the investment side, Guyana is a good destination for investment in several key areas. As Mr. Umar mentioned, Exxon, which is your home company here, headquartered here, has discovered significant oil resources. It is expected that they would actually start refining, exploring, and not exploring, what do you call it again? Well, production, but well, not refining. They're not going to refine in Guyana, but drilling is the word. Good. They're going to start drilling in 2018, I'm told. I'm not very hopeful because with the oil prices as they are now, I don't know if it makes sense, but by 2018 we might see an improvement. From their perspective, and from Guyana's perspective, the price of oil, that would make it very feasible to move ahead with the drilling so that the country could earn some much needed revenue. Strategically located in the tip of South America with its economic, cultural, and political ties with the Caribbean, as a member of CARICOM and CARIFORUM, Guyana offers several advantages and incentives to investors. Advantages include preferential access to key markets, including Brazil, US, Canada, and countries in Europe. The incentives include duty-free concession on raw material, equipment, etc., tax holidays, and repatriation of profits. So if you invest in Guyana, the equipment and so on that you send in will be duty-free. Any raw material that is used in the manufacture of whatever you're producing, it will be duty-free. There are tax holidays offered to the company for as long as 15 years. And you are allowed to repatriate your profits. Key areas for investment include agriculture, agribusiness, mining, information technology, real estate development, including low-income housing, electronic assembly, and more. Okay, agriculture and agribusiness, and that's an area that Guyana and the entire CARICOM actually wants to focus a lot more attention on, and they're offering special incentives. CARICOM imports almost $5 billion in food products each year. Many of these imports are products we already produce and can produce. The problem is that we need to produce in adequate quantities and on a timely basis to meet local demand and export potential. New products on demand, primarily based on new medical findings, include coconuts, and that's coconut water and a number of other derivatives from the coconut, peanuts, and the soursop. Some people now argue that the soursop is the best thing since sliced bread, and it's a cure for all kinds of things, but mainly cancer. Okay, so Guyana, Belize, and Suriname have been identified as key countries with arable and available land. Guyana and the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI, are collaborating on attracting investment in this sector. And as I said, there are some very encouraging incentives being offered, like the 99-year lease on land for the cultivation of crops, particularly if you're going to do value added and go the next step into processing for local consumption and for export. Just last month, in February, the Chamber, in association again with Outreach to the Americas, held a one-day conference in Florida for the business community, at which CARDI made the presentation about the plan of the CARICOM heads to attract investors, particularly in agribusiness. And I would want to say to particularly Guyanese in the diaspora that agribusiness is one of the very encouraging areas for your investment. There are guaranteed markets, like for instance on coconut water. There's a Jamaican-American company, Oturius Foods, that has given a commitment that it could buy all the coconut water that Guyana can offer. They have a market for it. Right now, there's the export of some coconut water to out of the Pomeroon, for those of you who know Guyana well, out of the Pomeroon, to Trinidad and Tobago. The problem though is that the way it's done, we've got to do it differently if we're going to access the international markets, because it requires us meeting certain phytosanitary measures. You know, you can't cut the coconut and then the water touch your hand and burn in the thing and so on. That's the problem you are selling coconut water to California. But not to the international markets. So as a matter of fact, one of the companies going down with us to Guyana is a company that is going to be looking at the coconut water project to see whether we could, we can have a plant installed that would collect the coconut water and bottle it and so on, in keeping with international standards and international requirements. The Guyanese diaspora. The Guyanese diaspora in the US is, for the most part, a well-to-do immigrant group whose household income is said to be 92% of the national average. Basically, these earn some good money, right, compared to some other groups. We have quite an entrepreneurial spirit and are among the top immigrant business owners in several cities. I mean, if you come to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 80% of the businesses are Guyanese American owned. Probably closely followed by Jamaicans and the Haitians. In Miami, it might be a little different. The Jamaicans might outnumber us, and the Trinidadians there, but in Fort Lauderdale and in West Palm Beach and in Orlando, the Guyanese businesses rule the roost. The problem though is that we are not organized, as a business community here in the US. So it's difficult to assess our real contribution to the communities where our businesses are located. And we need to do that. Because when a Guyanese owned business needs to access funding from the Small Business Administration or from the Export Corporation of Florida or a similar one in Texas or in New York, we've got to show that not only that your company, your individual company is viable, but that that you're part of a viable and business community that makes a contribution to the creation of jobs, to the payment of taxes, and so on. So quite often, it's like the carnivals that we hold. The Jews, and I don't mean to be, but the Jews, the Irish, and other people, they have their parades and so on, and it's not a big hassle when it comes to the Caribbean Carnival. And granted, there have been some incidents and so on that we rather not have had. But when it comes to things, it's always a difficulty. You must finish at 6. The police comes and push you off the road. They want $45 an hour for the police when they charge other people $27, and so on. This is a way to see if they can get you not to hold your event.